Join us as we go down the rabbit hole looking at the secrets of the Matrix VFX.
Everyone, welcome back to AsArt with Nick and John. We did a video a little while back on the Matrix as a whole, just reviewing it, taking a look. Was it Taylor's one of her first
it was Taylor's first viewing watching the Matrix.
Yeah, which is
it's like,
crazy.
how have you been? You were born in the 90s and you didn't watch the Matrix your whole life?
That blew my mind almost as much as the Matrix did when I watched it. So if you haven't seen that video, go give that a view. But overall,
how much of your mind do you have left? I'm sorry.
I never had a full one to begin with, so you have. But Nick and I both worked in the visual effects industry. We love visual effects, and it was kind of odd that we haven't done a visual effects breakdown on this yet. Yeah. But with the new Matrix movie right around the corner, honestly, I've been reading up and listening to some podcasts. People are actually pretty excited about this. If there was ever a new time and a good time to revamp the Matrix, this is actually a good time because technology is changing how things are happening a lot right now. And I think it's a fun time to revisit it. With that right around the corner, it makes sense to actually do a visual effects breakdown of the first one. And stay tuned to the channel. We may very well be revisiting and reviews and visual effects breaks down for the second and third movie potentially as well. So check out, subscribe if you like the content we're putting out, and we may be revisiting that stuff come up soon.
I really want to talk about the fight scene. I really want to talk about the fight scene with the multiple Mr. Smiths.
So
I really want to talk about it.
Yes. So if you guys if you guys are a fan of the Matrix, some of the things we're going to be talking about are going to be familiar, but hopefully we'll be getting into a few more details or maybe some little trivia and tidbits and things like that you're not familiar with. This is kind of a fun one for me because one of my favorite classes I taught at one of the colleges I was at for 12 years is a intro to visual effects and motion graphics. And I would talk about the history of go all the way back from the very, very beginning of the moving camera to usually around the early 2000s, things like that, which is ironically right around the time we had the Matrix, so that was about the time I typically left off because I wanted them to do presentations on newer stuff after that. But there was a lot of really cool making ofs that if you think about the Matrix, that's early DVD era. And that's when special features was a really big deal. And that's when you had all kinds of DVD extras. So you got a lot of really cool making ofs, and I would show those to classes. So a lot of those certain chapters at least got really ingrained into my mind. So it'll be fun to talk about some of those things. So Nick, when you think about the Matrix, I know you said bullet time, but is there other things that really, are there other things that really popped out to you that you just, maybe not just special effects, but things that were really mimicked or memorable things to you?
Green. Color grading.
Yeah, color grading. That's a significant factor. Yeah.
Do you want me to keep going? Am I just spouting out stuff?
Yeah, you can spout out stuff. Hopefully morphing stuff.
Morphing when the agents take over the bodies.
Morphing. Yeah. So one of the fun things to talk about this movie is a lot of instructors I had in school and a lot of comp supervisors and comp leads I had and jobs I had all worked on the Matrix movies, the first, second, and third one. So it's cool because I got some firsthand stories. Some of I never have read or heard about anywhere else. So maybe as we're going through the series, especially on the third movie, if we get to if we get to a review on the third one, I heard a story from one of my instructors that I've never heard anywhere else ever anywhere. And I thought that'd be a really fun story if we get to that one to tell that one.
Oh, you're gonna leave me hanging?
I'll tell you off air. Everybody else off the way.
You know what, guys? Subscribe. Hit that button if you want to hear John's story, because I do. Can you hit it for me, please? Because I really want to hear the story. Because he's very good about not telling me stuff. Even after we film, like, John, tell me. He'll be like, now his lips are sealed.
Or I have such a bad memory, I forget what I was going to tell him. That actually happens quite a bit as well. But so obviously the biggest thing that I think people remember that was a big thing that kind of, if you go back further, a huge thing in the, I guess, early 90s was Willow and the morphine. And that you saw that in other movies later on. So you would see it in The Abyss, and then you would see it in Terminator 2. And then there's a really great morphine video on Willow you can find online, and it came with the DVD and stuff. But they were saying after that, it was such a big thing. A visual effect is good if everybody tries to do it and it becomes so overdone that nobody wants to do it after that. And The Matrix with bullet time was definitely one of those things. And you saw it in everything you could think of, parodying it and trying
Shrek.
to take it further. Yeah, you saw it in Shrek. You saw it in Alvin and the Chipmunks. One of my favorite, a really fun French film that I like was called Le Pacte de Loup, which is translated Brotherhood of the Wolf. It's like a medieval Matrix. Really, really fun. They
Scary
do
movie.
kind of, and you even think of like in, the kind of the slow motion, even though it's not bullet time, the movie 300, like the slow motion fights and stuff like that. It was just done everywhere, and then it just kind of went away because it was being done so much. But one thing I really like about The Matrix 1 is how they did the bullet time versus how they did it in the second and third movie.
Yes.
So
cameras. They used cameras. They actually
physical
set it up.
cameras. So what I wanted to ask Nick is, when were we getting digital? When did digital doubles become really well refined? Where we were getting digital doubles? Yes. So I'm thinking
that's a trick question. Never.
Because I'm thinking we started to get it in quick shots in like Two Towers, Return of the King. But when are we getting it more often than not for shots?
Oh man, it would have to be the superhero stuff.
Yeah. So that's way later, right?
Spider-Man, because he has a suit on. It's not realistic humans, but it's like, you're kind of doing that digital doubles with the suits, and then like Iron Man to Captain America. Yeah, I feel like that's when it's starting to get really good.
Iron Man 2, around there. Yeah, and that's quite a ways later, right? That's quite a ways after. But that's also
not like human skin though. Like that's not like, Agent Smiths all fighting in a little cramped room and there's 50,000 of them. Yeah. And it wasn't like that still. I mean, we're still not even there. Like, it's so tough. Like, and the most recent one would be the Terminator movie, right? Blade Runner did a good job doing a digital double, but like it's still, even though it's pretty close.
I mean, it's
pretty freaking close.
That's trying to just recreate. I'm talking about just doing it for quick shots because they don't. That's for acting purposes because they don't have the actors. I'm just thinking of like quick movements and shots. No, well, that's the artistry. How far the artistry has come. But I'm thinking, so in 1998 when we got The Matrix, right? I mean, there was. They wanted to have these crazy shots, as all of you know, where you're traveling around this. And this goes back to the very earliest motion pictures where when people were just messing around before you even had a moving camera.
Betting on horses.
Horses, or trying to capture a moment in time, like capturing a person walking up a staircase, taking pictures or setting off cameras from different moments in the same scene at the same time. And it's a frozen moment in time. And it's the exact same thing, just, way, way, way down the line. We're using in The Matrix where you're setting off, arranged cameras in an arc and setting them off all at the same time. And then you're stringing them together one frame at a time and you're playing that. And there is some digital manipulation in them. So say you have a camera here and here, but you want a smoother motion between those two cameras. They are kind of synthesizing in between kind of cameras and frames.
It's like pixel blending almost at that point, right?
Pixel blending, but they are physically real cameras. They're spinning together. When you get to the second and third Matrix movies, a lot of people complain that, it actually doesn't look as good. And that's because they're actually using CG digital doubles for when he's fighting all the Agent Smiths with the poles and things like that.
Like I've stated before, it because the Matrix is real and it just couldn't handle the rendering.
They ran out of RAM,
ran out of RAM.
Yeah, exactly. GPU overloaded. But so in this movie, the cool thing about the bullet time is it's real cameras, and because of that, it looks really real. And the cool thing is we'll probably maybe we'll try and put this in the video, a quick. Their first test, they had an exploding trash can, and they had a stand-in guy, kind of doing the bullet time where he's leaning back, and you see an exploding trash can, and all the cameras are going around him, and it looks so cool. It's like the first time they tried that out, they must have said, "Wow, that looks awesome." And the cool thing is they thought that up on their own. They formed their own. So Warner Brothers said, "Hey, go ahead and form your own visual effects studio for this." They went to Industrial Light and Magic, they went to all these visual effects studios, and for the bullet time, their solutions were you need to basically do tracks, do a dolly move, a track move, and basically like you need the camera to move super, super fast. So you're basically going to attach a rocket to it and have it move super fast, and everything
super high frame rate too.
Yeah, and everything would have blown up basically. But instead of moving it super fast, I mean, but instead they said, okay, we're going to, instead of moving the camera, we're going to have a bunch of cameras and just animate the movement. And so it's really cool how they did it, but it's almost like Weta, Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson wanted to have their own company to do this stuff. Yeah. Whereas ESC, Warner Brothers said, okay, form ESC, Escape, Entertainment, and they're going to do all the visual effects there. And unfortunately, ESC didn't hang around long after the third Matrix movie was done. They did like Constantine and Catwoman, I think was the last movie, horror movie. Never saw it, but
but
it was a really cool effect. Yeah.
Anything in slow motion looks cool.
Anything
in bullet time looks amazingly good.
And
mind blowing how cool, because it's just like any action you do just looks cool. Pop a balloon, just even a walking pose is it's just so cool.
One of the coolest integrations I saw bullet time after I think the first or second movie is the X Games one year. They built in a bunch of cameras into the base of the half pipe. So when they were skateboarding, as they're up in the air, they could move the camera, and you got these bullet time, like skateboarding moves, and it was really cool. But you saw it just go away after that. Like the hype train for that just kind of fell off really quick, because again, if something is super popular, it's adopted, and they're like, we're sick of it. It's like a popular radio song. When the radio
it's going to come back big time. It's like the yo-yo
or a variation. Yeah,
yo-yo was great, and then people were like, all you can do is up and down, and they started putting mechanical things in it so it can spin, and then it popped back up, and then it goes away, and then they're like, oh my gosh, it does this. They always come back, and it's like, woohoo, let's do it.
I have never heard that comparison before in my entire life.
Comment down below if you used to play with Lego or not Legos, yo-yos. Gosh.
So bullet time was just one of those. What else did you want to talk about as far as that? So one of the other cool elements as far as beyond bullet time was how they went about that. So they had to shoot the bullet time sequences against the green screen, because they had all these cameras going, a full half circle or circle around, and they needed to be able to put the person in an environment once they shot them in the environment, because these cameras weren't set up in the actual environment. They had to light the people really good and put in the environment. So say that first shot when Trinity jumps up and does that kick against the guy in the beginning of the movie.
Screen.
They had to put her in that warehouse, and she was in a green screen. And so they wanted that warehouse, but they have to create that exact same camera move there. And honestly, it's funny. I feel like they could have done a motion control camera move where they program the move and have it recreate that same camera move. But I guess they wanted more flexibility. So what they did is a technique called photogrammetry, and it's a lot more prevalent and used a lot more commonly now. You can actually kind of do similar stuff on your on your smartphone now. But you basically take pictures from all kinds of every single angle of an object, and then the computer figures out, based on how the parallax of the camera is moving, like things that are closer from you and further away move at different rates. It figures out what's further away and what's closer, and it figures out basically where things are in 3D space, and it maps the space. So the warehouse, it figures out where the pillars are, where the far end of the room is, the further end, and it maps that space. And so once you have a 3D model of that room that physically looks real because it's taken it from real photos, then you have a real 3D room. You have the real footage of Trinity or Neo or whoever it is, and you can put them in that space. And there's going to need to be some other witchcraft of trying to extract that 3D camera move through 3D match moving. But when you put all those together, it's just, now you get stuff like this kind of all the time, and I don't want to take away from that. But at the time, the first time I saw The Matrix,
they were the first.
Just absolutely, they were the first to do something
Simpsons
like that.
did it.
The only other thing I had seen before that, and it was a one-off shot in a movie. It was a horrible movie. It was a really famous video game creator. It was a movie called Wing Commander. And there was one shot where this ship was hit with like some type of explosion or something, and everybody was stopped in midair, and so it was frozen in time, but the camera was rotating around them, and it was a one-off shot. It's the only thing that movie really was well known for at the time, and it was that frozen moment, but it wasn't things still moving while the camera was rotating. It was a kind of different thing. But aside from that,
they do now in the X-Men movies, where it's all CG basically now.
And it looks amazing, but it's like we've seen it a number of times. It's visual effects is so hard to stay on the cutting edge. It's so hard. Yeah,
it's true. I mean, we had Smeagol, then we got Dobby, then we're like, we're tired of 3D characters.
Well, we had Jar Jar, then we had Gollum. Yeah,
no one thinks of Jar Jar first. I'm sorry, Jar Jar.
Oh,
but he was the first though.
Yeah, I had instructors that were really mad. They worked on episode 1. They were really mad that didn't win the Academy Award, because The Matrix won it that year.
Yep.
But yet, if you look at a technical standpoint, that was the
Matrix
first
still won.
CG. Yeah, Matrix. Yeah, did probably rightly so. Yeah. So, any other things? I mean, the Matrix had a lot of really good stuff in it. Other things that you think of?
I mean, they did the cool stuff with the bullets through the air, slowing down. They had the coolest at the time. It was like the coolest leather jackets. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, there was the bullet time, there was the usage of photogrammetry, but a lot of it was the integration and the art style in which they did the things, right? It wasn't just the technology, it was how they did it. Because so episode 1 did some very technology-based things, but the integration and how it aided the storytelling wasn't there, right?
Yeah.
Those went head-to-head the same year, but I feel like The Matrix won for the right reasons when it came to,
Yeah. Well, The Matrix, too, it was just something so new.
Yes.
Like, if they used Jar Jar in a way where it was visually stunning, like, but Jar Jar just was a character there. Like, you know what I mean? It wasn't like, for example, the reason why we remember Smeagol probably is because he talks to himself, and the conversation he has with himself, which isn't, it's not the technology. I mean, it is the technology with the motion, but it's the way it was edited. You get like the torment between the character where he has like this whole moment to himself. Jar Jar never has a moment to himself.
It's
you don't see anything of Jar Jar unless he's like in the background, just a bumbling idiot. You know, his character's not even developed at all in the movie.
It's kind of not fair to the visual effects people because it comes down to how good is the story and how are the visual effects used for the story. If Jar Jar had been an integral person to the story the way Smeagol was, then it probably would have won for best,
It's true.
I mean, that's my thought at least. I mean,
or
it's unfortunate.
You're right. Like if he was in the place of Qui-Gon, let's just say Qui-Gon.
Qui-Gon Binks.
Look like
Qui-Gon
Jar Jar.
Binks.
But if he was the main character though, and he had more interactions with Anakin or whatever, where you actually develop an actual relationship and whatever with the character that might have. It's like Yoda. Everyone loves Yoda. He's a puppet.
Yeah.
Everyone yells because of Yoda, his character. If we just had Yoda in the background going, hitting random droids with his stick, like, you know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't have been the same, you know what I mean? Like, that's just the way it is. That's the way it is.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the way the cookie crumbles.
It's a bummer because whether the movie, and this is something that visual effects artists do struggle with that work on major motion pictures. You have no idea if the movie's going to come out good or not.
Sure.
And, a lot of people tell themselves, like, it's going to be worth it when the movie comes out. It's going to look awesome. It's going to be a great movie. And you have no idea.
That's what John said when he worked on Alvin and Chipmunks.
I knew that was not going to. But when Nick worked on the Smurfs, he knew it was going to be a
edited
hit.
out. That's fine.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just one of. But
this was a great little conversation though. Like it just taps the surface of everything that we can talk about with the Matrix. And you know what, John, we should probably even do other topics because we're going to cover 2 and 3, and there's going to be stuff that we're probably going to reference in 1 that we forgot about, but we'll remember with 2, and then stuff when we do 3, we'll remember back in 2 and then 1 and then 3 and the 2 and the 1 and the 3.
And you know what? One other thing we should talk about is what you said, the color grading.
Yes, the color grading.
And since you thought of it, go ahead and introduce it. Go ahead.
I can't think of a movie before that uses color grading, like color like that to that extent, to like really theme a movie. Like it's so green.
It's so green. It's so green. Yeah, there's only a few movies that I think of before color grading became a very common thing that was available to basically
Blade Runner.
Well, so I think of the movie Traffic. If you guys have never seen that, you have very distinct environments. So the United States is depicted very blue in that movie, like a cold blue where it's not a friendly place. And then you have Mexico established as a very like diseased, like corrupted green. And then you have a couple other movies that I could think of. That's the only other one that comes to mind really. And then you got The Matrix, and you had a very similar thing where, like Nick said, The Matrix is very green. And then when you get the few scenes where it's the real world, you get this blue. And it's just such it's such a rarity at that time. Now it's a very, very common thing. Like my wife likes to watch, Netflix series, and almost every show has a very strong color grade on it now. Like you watch a medieval show and all the torches glow perfect, and you have all these nice shadows, and it's really, really well done. But that's because software packages like DaVinci Resolve and SpeedGrade and Lux and all these different things are really widely available now. But used to have $100,000 machines in order to do this stuff at the time, and only high end studios could afford these.
Yeah, because the only one I think of, like an older one, which would be, I think 80s, right, would be Empire Strikes Back. There was, I mean, maybe I'm just thinking of the lighting. The lighting was
that was intense. Just done through lighting. That was just very high end production lighting. I think. It was absolutely beautiful. Yeah,
so beautiful.
But you're
right. It was just lighting. But the colors are so strong in my head. Yes, I'm like, was that color graded? No, you're right. It was lighting.
But I mean,
dude, we could talk forever about the lighting of that movie.
Sometimes there was another movie that they had small scenes. So there's this movie, Denzel Washington. I love Denzel Washington. I love John Goodman. And there's this movie called Fallen where there's like demon in it, and there's this demon vision where they found this photographer that had this really cool look to his photography, and they said, "Hey, can you make rolls of film out of this still image film that you do?" And he's like, "I don't know if it'll work, but I can do it for you guys." And so they shot every single shot regular and with his film, in case it didn't work, and it actually did work. And so when you were looking through the demon's eyes, it had this really crazy look to it, but they were so worried that it wasn't going to work that they shot it both ways just as a backup. But again, this is around the same period. That's like 1997, around there. But this is how rare that type of stuff was at the time, that it was really considered experimental. So I've heard stories where they would literally take film and put it like in an oven and bake it for a while, like their actual film print, to give it, a particular like film look. And that's pretty darn scary. Nick and I were talking before this episode on how expensive
isn't it
film
like highly
is.
Flammable too, film?
Well, the old film, like silver nitrate film.
Okay, I was about to say, I'm like, I remember horror stories of like, so many films catching on fire.
So my father-in-law works at the National Film Archive, and they have vaults below ground, controlled temperature, and every film reel is in individual things because silver nitrate film may spontaneously combust and catch fire. So that's how,
that's why they always used to say that film was hot.
Thank you very much for watching AsArt. That's all we have to say.
Explosive film, man.
But that just goes to show that, this first Matrix film did not have a big budget. It became so immensely successful that Warner Brothers gave them.
Yeah, it hurt the other two movies having such a big budget.
They actually said it. And just recently with this new film coming out, the fourth Matrix film, I've been listening to some podcasts and people have been talking about how people have been coming out that worked on the first three films and said, we actually didn't like working on the second and third ones as much because there was so much of a big brother feeling that they were watching everything. We had way more money, but they were dictating how everything was being done later on.
Because they want to make more money. It becomes like a money-making machine at that
point. Whereas the first one, they were not giving them any money, but they basically gave them full creative freedom. And that's kind of the give and take you get. Unless you're a huge, huge director and you have a spotless record where they're going to give you that. Like Quentin Tarantino, from everything I've heard, they just give him creative freedom because he's never had a miss at this point. Yeah. But very rarely.
Miyazaki, we're going through all the Miyazaki movies.
Yeah.
He does everything. Literally everything.
Now it is his studio. It is his studio. But aside from that, you don't really get stuff like that. Yeah. So this is one of those moments in time where they didn't have a huge budget, but they just made it work. And so it's just one of those awesome things. If you guys have other stuff about The Matrix you'd like us to discuss, it's one of my favorite movies. Nick definitely likes it a lot as well. Yeah. We're going to probably be going through the second and third Matrix movies. We're definitely going to be, probably what we're going to be doing is when the fourth one hits HBO Max very soon, we'll maybe put the date up on the screen right now. When that one comes out, we're probably going to do a live edit, quick turnaround review of what our thoughts were on that. And maybe we'll do a visual effects breakdown later on after that. But we're really looking forward to that. Let us know your thoughts on the first Matrix movie, what you'd like us to cover about the second and third, or more things you'd like us to cover on the first. We'll be really interested to do more content on this. Anything else you want to say? All right. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you on the next AsArt. Neo, Trinity, Morpheus.